So thank you for being here. The talk today, I have finally chosen natural health. Now what? Because this is so much so many of the questions that I get from people either on Facebook or Instagram, or mostly a lot of the moms that I meet in person start asking me 50 million questions about what it's like to raise children outside of the modern medical model. And that is indeed how I got started. Now, you may have heard me as just Joni on my podcast. Joni Abbott is my real last name, and how that kind of came about, I'll explain in just a moment. But I have a 24-year radio career under my belt. Thanks to COVID, that kind of acts the last of me being on mainstream airwaves in that capacity. But that's okay, because I've been podcasting for a while. I MC different events locally and nationally. I still have a leg in country music, if any of you like country music at all. But I'm a natural health advocate. This has been my lifestyle for about 20 years. Really seriously about 15, as I was learning how to raise my children outside of the modern medical model, which I've done successfully. I have home birthed, I've breastfed, I've homeschooled, I've baby worn, I've grown food in the dirt, I have given them the garden foods, and really started studying the gut microbiome as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that to learn how it is that we get an immune system in the first place. If this is the thing that's supposed to last us our whole life, and it's the thing that we want to keep up and going and up and running that protects us from sickness and disease, then how is it that we get one in the first place? And that was kind of my very first introduction to the gut microbiome, of which Robert Scott Bell was one of my first mentors in that mindset. When you start looking at the germ theory versus the law of the terrain, Antoine Béchamp versus Louis Pasteur, some medical history there for you as well. There were other trains of thought in the mid-1800s that aren't being taught to us, that information is not usually accessible to us or doctors. So in the modern mainstream world. So I found it so fascinating to start studying what the trains of thought were early on in how we approach our body, how we approach health, how we approach ourselves as nature, because we are nature and we cannot be separated. Okay, what else? I'm a Trinity trained health coach. I decided after COVID, just kind of axed my last part-time job in full-time or in mainstream radio, that I would go ahead and get certified in something so I can start seeing clients, and I do that now. And then one of my clients, who I'll share their story with you here in a moment, because he was my very first client, my first week in school here at Trinity. I became his paralegal, and there's a whole reason for that. But yeah, we ended up putting our minds together and going, wow, this is really cool. How can we do this together? And then just 20 years of research and applying natural methods and raising 4 kids. This was my talk from last year, making the switch from allopathy to naturopathy for you and your family. It was on Huva when we did our online Trinity event, and I did just a quick video presentation on all of that. And that's kind of why I morphed this talk, just kind of a continuation of everything from last year. So why 2 names? A lot of people think I have split personality disorder. I do not. The mental health panel was just before this in the other room. No, it's not me. So being in radio, I've had several on-air names. I started when I was 17 in radio, and Joni Mitchell was my first on-air name. That's who I was born. That's who I was named after. My father was a huge Joni Mitchell fan, and I thought, well, why not? People know the name. They think they know me already. That's familiar to them, so let's go with it. And so that's how a lot of people knew me. And then it was Joni and Company. Then it was a whole different on-air name. And then I got married, and then that was a name for a while. And then I got divorced, and then I went back to my old name. And everybody kept asking me, so what's your last name? And it ended up being Joni. Just call me Joni. And just Joni was born for that reason. And on social media, I just kind of morphed everything. Because, in my mainstream radio career, I had to keep my natural health life separate. It was like I was living 2 different worlds. Mainstream didn't want the fact that I interviewed people who had healed their cancer. They didn't want to know about coffee enemas. They certainly didn't want to know about how I was yoni steaming. And I managed to turn those into blogs anyway, that still live on the internet. Yes. About healing cancer, especially when most mainstream TV and radio stations are running for the cure and sponsoring all of those events, Racing for the Cure, things like that. Hospitals are big advertisers in most communities, so they don't really like it if you promote things that don't fall under the narrative, right? So kind of like the Western medical model, dissects and bisects our bodies, separating the whole and isolating the flow and functionality that we are all connected, and one thing affects the other. That's why I had to kind of morph all of my worlds and become, just Joni. Just me. doing what I do. So natural health begins with our mind. So in our mindset, most of us have been raised in the Western medical model. It's not one that promotes the oneness that we are with nature, right? We are trained to react and not prevent. We don't go to the doctor unless we are sick. We don't have any mindset at all set towards nutrition as a preventative model. We don't think about actually preventing dis-ease. So we've been taught that only one way exists to get better or to cure, which in some court cases recently, I have heard doctors and surgeons and lawyers saying that they cured somebody's cancer because they cut it out of their body. And we called them out on that for that. That's not even legal. They can't even legally claim that. They certainly can. No, we know we can't legally claim that for, all of the people who've been persecuted for saying so, even though that's what they've done. But it's only through the dismissal of other options used around the world that we have learned that only one way exists. And I'm going to help you dispel that today. We're going to learn about what the rest of the world does and has been doing for thousands of years. We've been trained to trust authority and not ourselves. We've become so disconnected from our own intuition. We've become so disconnected from realizing that our body wants to be in homeostasis. It wants to be in balance. It wants to heal. And to know that that's even a possibility is something that's new information to most people. We have to learn to develop a trust within ourselves again. And it is important to note that none of the healing modalities I'm sharing with you today are substitutes for allopathic medicine. There's always the need for emergency medicine and surgical procedures. Okay. I love this meme. Your body's ability to heal is greater than anyone has permitted you to believe. Other modalities that have been used around the world for thousands of years, homeopathy. Most people don't know what that is because, well, unless they hear it on the news, if it's the mainstream news, that homeopathy has been banned because, well, for some reason or another, teething tablets, belladonna was probably one of the most popular news stories about that. Ayurveda, this is another practice from around the world, traditional Chinese medicine, diet and nutrition, and I'm also going to touch on Bach flower remedies and flower essences for healing on a vibrational, energetic level. So homeopathy, what is it? It's a system of natural health care that's been in the world and has been used for over 200 years. Homeopathy treats every person as a unique individual with the aim of stimulating their own healing ability. A homeopath selects the most appropriate medicine based on the individual's specific symptoms and personal level of health, and it's recognized by the World Health Organization, surprisingly, as the second largest therapeutic system used in the world, while it is most popular in India and South America. Over 30 million people in Europe and millions of others around the world also benefit from its use. Homeopathy is based on the exhaustive studies, work, and teachings of Dr. Samuel Hahnemann and the dynamic principle of like cures like. So this is one of the most surprising things. I couldn't sleep one night, and I called Robert Scott Bell, who's a homeopath, and he said, "We'll get some coffee cruda." What? It's called coffee cruda. They use all these really cool Latin names, so it sounds like you're really saying something from Harry Potter when you're trying to, so it is like, it adds to the appeal for me of homeopathy. But yeah, he's like, try some coffee cruda. Well, you think coffee is going to keep you awake. How on God's green earth can it help you sleep? But in the mindset of like cures like, if you give it just a little bit, if you put just a tiny little bit, a diluted portion of it in your body, it actually cures the issue and you go to bed. It's amazing. This is the first and foundational principle of homeopathic medicine and is understood to mean that anything which can produce symptoms of disease in a healthy person can have a curative effect on those same symptoms in a sick person. Any substance which produces specific toxic symptoms in a healthy person when given in its full strength form will cure a sick person with those same symptoms in a very diluted form. And that's straight from himself, Dr. Samuel Hahnemann. These are a few remedies that I keep on hand in my house. It can change depending on how much you learn about yourself or your children. I love that they are so symptom specific, right? So for instance, first aid remedies, arnica. It's the #1 remedy for accidents, shock, injuries, and bruising. If a patient or client has a fear of being touched and may say they are all right when they clearly are not, you can use it for that. Other applications include pain after dental work and jet lag. I've used this specifically only after after dental work. I have a friend of mine who also has had an explant surgery. She had breast implants and they went toxic, so she had breast implant illness. And when she had her breast implants explanted, she only used arnica with great success for pain. So 2, calendula. Number 1 remedy for healing wounds. It's useful as a topical cream in low potency. It quickly seals wounds, so make sure the wound is completely clean before you use it. Hypericum. See, I don't even know how to pronounce all of these yet. I just know how to use them. It's the number 1 remedy for injuries to nerves. Pains are sharp and shooting, useful for pain after dental injection. Apis or apis, it's the number 1 remedy for bites and stings. It helps with redness, pain, and swelling. Do you notice how it's so symptom specific? So like if you have one wound that has pus or is bleeding or has a shooting pain versus another wound that might have a burning sensation, or you might have some neuropathy in with your, regarding your nerves. With that is what I love about homeopathy, is that it is so symptom specific. If your hands are sweaty versus your hands being cold, there's a different remedy for each one. And so it's really good to know the difference between each of them and utilize it accordingly. So this is what homeopathy looks like. These are little pellets that you melt underneath your tongue sublingually, and that gets it right into the system right away. And you can do in an acute setting, you can do it every 15 minutes for a few hours. Otherwise, then you'll want to slow it down after 2 hours and then take it according to direction. A few remedies to keep on hand just in general. Aconite. This is the nipping a cold in the bud. If you ever had a sickness that's just come on suddenly, this is the remedy to keep on hand for that. If it's onset precipitated by a cold, dry wind, fright, or shock, useful when illness comes on very suddenly. Gelsemium or gelsemium, number 1 remedy for the flu, extreme prostration and weakness, shivering up and down the spine. If you're trembling, aching muscles, heaviness of the head and eyes, kind of sounds a little similar to you know what. Eupatorium, another important flu remedy, especially if it's characterized by extreme aching in the bones as if they were broken. And Arsenicum album, number 1 remedy for food poisoning. Also useful for the flu. Patient is anxious and restless and does not want to be left alone. Fear of death. Maybe they have this impending sense of doom when they're sick. It gets worse at midnight, between midnight and 3 a.m. They could be thirsty for frequent sips of water. Sometimes if someone is craving warm water versus cold water, that's a different remedy in and of itself. So it's such a specific, symptom-specific remedy, but they do cover many generalized things. Something else in my journeys of studies over the last 20 years of raising children outside of the modern medical model that I came upon is Ayurveda. Has anyone heard of that? Ayurvedic medicine? Yeah. One of my favorites. It's Sanskrit for knowledge of life, and the principles of this ancient wisdom remind us that the entire web of life is intricately interwoven. That really aligns with kind of my worldview when it comes to health and body, that there's no separation between us and nature, us and spirit, us and divine, us and this earthly world. With a unique emphasis on total wellness, the art and science of Ayurveda work to harmonize our internal and our external worlds. Our 5 senses serve as the portals between the internal and external realms, as the 5 great elements of ether, air, fire, water, and earth dance the dance of creation around and within us. That's my favorite line because I really love to dance. Ayurveda groups these 5 elements into 3 basic types of energy and functional principles that are present in everybody and everything. Since there are no single words in English to describe these principles, they use the Sanskrit words Vata, Pitta, and Kapha to describe their combinations. And you can look up tests online to see which one you might dominantly be. And then, like, for one of them, you would not drink caffeine at all and need to do very grounding exercises like yoga, eat very grounding and warm foods. For someone else who falls into another category, cold foods would be fine, or you could eat less vegetables and maybe more fruit. So it's very symptom specific. It's very much observing your own personality, observing your body type, and it really helps you to kind of narrow down which one fits you best. Everything that we experience, be it a physical substance, a thought, or emotion, has certain qualities. So people are classified as Vata, which is wind, Pitta, fire, and Kapha, which is earth, to describe their combinations and their constitutions. And constitution is another word that's used dominantly in homeopathy. And Ayurveda and homeopathy are kind of similarly married in that way. That is where homeopathy was from Ayurveda. Homeopathy is hundreds of years old. Ayurveda is more than 5,000 years old. It's called the mother of all healing. Homeopathy has been said to have its roots in Ayurveda. There it was. Just as everyone has a unique fingerprint, each person has a particular pattern of energy, an individual combination of physical, mental, and emotional characteristics, which comprises their own constitution. From body types to emotions to even how you work, your work tendencies can all clue you in as to whether or not you are Vata, Pitta, or Kapha. Ayurveda offers many specific tools for each individual, and they also use a combination of different dietary guidelines as well, herbal medicinal preparations, healing oil treatments, yogic practices, and purificatory, I cannot say it, treatments to alleviate a huge array of ailments, physical and mental. And this is what Ayurveda looks like, right? There's all the herbs up there. There's the wheel of figuring out the fire, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, earth. The Panchakarma, has anyone ever done that? You're drinking a lot of ghee and you're eating the same thing for about 7 to 10 days. Yeah, you mix it in with some rice, and I've not made it the full 10 days on this, but it is a very effective cleanser, let me tell you. Very effective. You will be feeling much lighter after you do that. Okay, and then we're going to move on. Another modality, right? Another modality that we are often not taught is traditional Chinese medicine. We've heard of acupuncture, or maybe we've heard of acupressure. Maybe we've heard of things like Qigong and Tai Chi, but it still doesn't fully represent what this can mean to us and our health. Traditional Chinese medicine is thousands of years old and has changed little over the centuries. And I love that because we are still a very new country. If we look at the history of things, we're still relatively new. And why not glean wisdom from other cultures and other countries who've been around much longer than us, making much more observation of our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health. Its basic concept is that a vital force of life called qi surges through the body, and any imbalance to qi can cause disease and illness. This imbalance is most commonly thought to be caused by an alteration in the opposite and complementary forces that make up qi. These are called the yin and the yang, or the yin and the yang. We've all seen those. If you were in the 90s, we all had those necklaces or those tattoos. Just saying. Ancient Chinese believed that humans, we didn't even know what we were thinking. We didn't know what we were doing. We just knew it was so popular. It just looked so cool. Ancient Chinese believed that humans are microcosms of the larger surrounding universe, which I love, and are interconnected with nature and subject to its forces. Balance between health and disease. And I say dis-ease like that on purpose. I'm not mispronouncing that. It is very intentional that I say dis-ease and not disease. I used to say disease, but then when I learned about what dis-ease is in the body and how it is we get it through the imbalances of our life, I'm very intentional in saying it that way. So where was I? Okay. Balance between health and dis-ease is a key concept. Traditional Chinese medicine treatment seeks to restore this balance through treatment specific to the individual. Do you notice a theme with other modalities around the world and in cultures much older than the Western medical model? It's all about balance. We're finding the same similar kind of concepts and patterns throughout all of these other healing modalities, with none of which are found in modern medicine. Although it's preached, it's not taught, and it's certainly not modeled. Traditional Chinese medicine includes treatment to regain balance, may involve acupuncture, moxibustion, which I have a picture of me doing. Coming up next, it's the burning of herbal leaves on or near the body. In my case, we used mugwort, which helps bring balance about. Cupping, which I've also had done. It's the use of warmed glass jars to create suction on certain points of the body. These are usually within the acupuncture meridian, acupressure points, things like that. Massage, herbal remedies, movement and concentration exercises such as Tai Chi. This is what traditional medicine, Chinese medicine, looks like. The moxibustion's on your right, the cupping is on your left, acupuncture on the lower bottom. And then, of course, something else that's really important is tongue mapping. I learned this in the natural health program here at Trinity School of Natural Health in the health coaching program. Tongue mapping is an amazing way to look at the general health of somebody. If you see a dark line down the middle, it shows signs of dehydration. That's also where your stomach is, so it could also be different indicators of digestive issues or digestive disorders. If there's scalloping on the edges of the tongue, it was acupuncture, in fact, who helped me understand the level of PTSD that I had. So there is a split or a missing part in the tip of my tongue, which it had never been observed before. And it was my acupuncturist who said, okay, we're dealing with a lot of trauma here. This would make sense. This would make sense that your body would be out of whack. It would make sense that your adrenals are burnt out. It would make sense that your thyroid is not functioning correctly. It would make sense that you're just really overall pretty tired, but you're high functioning, so you act like you're not, right? And it was just the one tongue mapping that all she had to do was look at that to kind of call me out. You know, she was coming for my life, basically. Okay, and this is me after moxibustion. That is a gua sha. And moxibustion's on the right. The bruising's from the gua sha, moxibustion's on the right. That's her lighting mugwort on needles in my leg. And that helps to bring a warming feeling, and it also helps to increase circulation at a particular acupressure or acupuncture point. My spleen energy seemed to be kind of low, so that was the point that was on, and she was lighting some fire on my legs, basically, to really make it cool. And it was doing really cool things for my body, but I was so geeked out about that. I was like, yeah, light it up. This is great. Because I kind of loved being my own personal experiment. And if I will never tell a client to do something I have not done or tried myself at least once or twice. So yeah, if I'm going to say, hey, maybe you should try this, it's because I know I've done it on myself. But the gua sha, she just took, one of those soup spoons, dipped that in some oil and went to town on my back, and it was a very particular motion and movement. It did not feel as if it would bruise, but because of the level of whatever my imbalance was and the level of the way that she was doing it in a very quick motion, that was the result within just a couple of hours of coming home from acupuncture. And, a lot of people think, like, okay, imagine this on a child. It was painless for me, totally painless. But in our culture, because of Western medicine, this would be considered abuse. That's the harsh reality, in fact, that if another doctor or a mandatory reporter were to see this on a child, although it's harmless and actually helping the body, they would think that this is abuse. And I just wanted to show you the results of that, so you would just kind of know that ahead of time, right? That you would understand that the body might have some bruising, and how the body would respond to this on me may not be how it responds on you. It's, again, very bio-individual, very individualistic. So I just wanted to show you. Next, this one was not in my presentation from last year, Bach flower remedies and flower essences. And I will tell you, the biggest surprise of this last year for me are these things. The biggest, I didn't think it was going to have as big of an impact on my life and my clients' lives, have been 100% flower essences and Bach flower remedies. We'll learn a little bit about Dr. Bach here in just a second. Emotional health directly impacts your physical health. Like, I kind of knew that when I was in a very unhealthy and toxic marriage. I was extremely heavy, and I was eating healthier than I had ever eaten in my life. I felt better, and I had more knowledge, and I was just so much into non-GMO and organic. I mean, we would go to the Amish to get our raw milk, that dangerous raw milk we were all talking about earlier. We would go get all of our cheese and our meats and our vegetables from an organic farm, and we made trips, frequently to do so. And I knew that my life was really upside down, and I wasn't addressing the one thing, right? It's like the elephant in the room that you just really don't want to address, but you're going to try to push through and get through it anyway. No, my body shut down. I had adrenal fatigue. I was 250 pounds, and I had never been that heavy in my life, and I could not lose weight to save my life. I left, and I dropped 85 pounds in 4 months. And it was like, whoop, okay, there's something here. I started to get emotionally healthy. I hadn't even only used Bach flower remedies until I had only used the rescue remedy with like dental treatments for my kids, because that's what my holistic dentist suggested, right? So when I started to dig more and more into Bach flower remedies during my training here at Trinity School of Natural Health, I started to really put the two and two together. How this works, how energy works, how the vibration, if you think about it like a radio tower, right? It emits a frequency. Your antenna on your car picks up that frequency, and then it transmits on your radio dial according to which frequency you are dialing into and tuning into. I understood that concept great. I'd been in radio 24 years. It worked for me. And it's really the perfect way to describe how it is that we emit an emotional frequency or other people emit an emotional frequency. Trees, blades of grass, flowers, everything around us that's living emits a frequency, and we pick up on it, and we can actually decide whether or not we want to tune into that or not. I just say no to narcissists. That's just that's one of my, just say no. Just walk away. So because of this, right, this was the one thing that my client that I was telling you about earlier, it was the big surprise. It started working on me. I started working on these with my family, but with my client, I saw the most success. I'll go into his story here in a second. Let's learn about Dr. Edward Bach. Now, if you Wikipedia him, he was just some kind of spiritualist. They totally minimize who he was in the 20s. They minimize who he was in the medical field. And I think it's important that we represent my birthday twin, by the way. Dr. Edward Bach studied medicine at the University College Hospital in London and obtained a diploma in public health at Cambridge. That's no small feat. He was a house surgeon and a causality medical officer at University College Hospital. He worked at the National Temperance Hospital and practiced for over 20 years in London as a Harley Street consultant and bacteriologist. After research in immunology, he developed an interest in homeopathy and then joined the laboratories of the Royal London Homeopathic Hospital in 1919. Where is that hospital? Where's a homeopathic hospital? I read that again last night, and I had the same response I did last year. I'm like, where is that? He developed 7 bacterial nosodes, the 7 Bach nosodes, which have received only limited recognition, classically, right? Despite the success of his work with orthodox medicine, he felt dissatisfied with the way doctors were expected to concentrate on diseases and ignore the people who were suffering from them. He turned to alternative therapies. He believed that illness is the effect of disharmony between body and mind. Symptoms of an illness are the external expression of negative emotional states. In 1928, right, and this is just a few years after the Flexner report came out, just a few years after all of the things Ty and Charlene, when they were going through that whole historical timeline of how our modern medical system is missing things from around the world, how it is that we aren't trained, doctors today aren't trained on nutrition. This just falls right in the middle of that entire timeline. So in 1928, he began to work on his own remedies made from plants. At the age of 43, he gave up his lucrative Harley Street practice and left London in order to concentrate on finding a new system of healing involving plant remedies. He was sure a new system of medicine could be found in nature, so he left to work in Wales and the English countryside. In spring and summer, he discovered and prepared new herbal remedies, and in the winter, he treated patients for free. Now that falls in line with Hippocrates, the father of medicine in the 3rd and 4th centuries. What I love about that is that a doctor's original job when they teach patients food is medicine, right? When they're teaching their patients, the entire concept of the father of medicine was built on the fact that you were supposed to teach your patients how to care for their bodies. You're supposed to teach your patients about their body, teach them fill in the gaps of maybe what they don't know, and let them be their own doctor. That's the purpose, the original purpose of doctors. And it's funny that the Hippocratic Oath, I don't even think they take that anymore, but it was taken by every single Western medical doctor up until recently, I'd say in the last 10 years. By 1932, Dr. Edward Bach had discovered the first of his 12 remedies. Then he used them on many patients who came to him for treatment. So he has 38 remedies. You can buy them all on Amazon, and they're all very symptom specific. For instance, this is the easiest one to remember. If you're feeling overwhelmed, you're having a day where you're like, man, everything's bothering me. I'm having some anxiety. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Take elm. Put 4 drops under your tongue immediately. You can put it in your water and sip on it throughout the day. But you are supporting your body's vibration and frequency and helping every organ support that. Robert Scott Bell, yeah. Elm, E-L-M, yeah. Elm trees, yeah. And then there's, let me see, one of my other favorite ones for fear. There are several for fear. There's aspen. Aspen is for something like a generalized fear. Mimulus is another of the original 38, which is when you know that you're afraid of something more specifically. So for instance, this last year, people are afraid of COVID, right? So why not support your body to stay out of fear? And we are going to touch on fear a little bit and do an exercise, breathing exercise that has been really near and dear to me this last year and has kept me out of anxiety attacks. All right, so I'm going to stop here and share the story of my very first client 1 week into school as a health coach. He's a lawyer. Very high functioning, very busy trial lawyer. And he came to me and he said, "Hey, I'm having some health issues. You're the first person I thought of to contact." "Okay, great. What's going on?" "My left kidney's dying." "You're losing an organ?" Yeah, they want to take it out. And I'm like, okay, no small feat here. Okay, well, let's start talking. And I decided after learning about Bach flower remedies in school that we were going to utilize this to help him. So fear is stored up in the kidneys, and there's a lung-kidney axis, which Robert Scott Bell did mention in his talk, if you didn't hear it or not. But they're very closely related. Your liver, did I say lung and kidneys? Yeah, also liver and kidneys as well. Your anger stores in the liver. If you realize that every emotion is connected to an organ in your body, there's grief stores up in your lungs. Okay, so if you don't properly get through things that have grieved you in your life, you don't fully express grief, you can have lung issues. By the way, when I was going through my divorce, 4 months of lung issues that I could not heal with anything herbal or natural or homeopathic until I had a massive outpour of emotion. Did that grief in my lungs go away? So anger stores up in your liver. It's a really good idea not to be angry and to always not attack, but always support your liver. Liver is super gunky and so often overwhelmed with the toxins that we come into contact with on a daily basis. It's a great idea to start supporting your liver. And then, of course, fear is found in your kidneys. So we had a lot of conversations about fear. And it's surprising because most of my clients are men who call me to cry. And I'm not kidding. I thought I was going to be working dominantly with women. I don't. I mean, you're welcome to work with me if you want, but I'm just saying, like, these guys are coming out everywhere because I think there's a real awakening happening here when it comes to connecting with ourselves again, really coming into the space of intuition, recognizing our divine feminine, our divine masculine, and finding that yin and the yang or yin and the yang balance within each of us. Because that divine masculine, that divine feminine resides in all of us. And if we're operating in one or the other too much, that imbalance is going to happen. And so he called me to talk about the fact that they wanted to remove his left kidney. And we started to go through the history. I go down to the history of, like, how were you born? Because if you were born C-section and you were not born vaginally, we're already working with a deficient immune system. When you are born vaginally, you get the gut microbes that your body needs to seed the very immune system that's going to be growing inside of you. And when we're looking at it from a microbial perspective, you do not get that same microbial seeding when babies are born C-section. In fact, their immune systems are being seeded by whatever bacteria, germs, and viruses are found on the gloves and gowns of the doctors and nurses pulling them out and handling the babies. So that's another thing. So I start off wanting to know how you're born. And then we went through the whole life history. He was a wrestler, did a lot of protein powders and creatine in high school. 16 years old was the first time he started having issues with his kidneys. And of course, I have his permission to talk about this. And then we started talking about fear. We started talking about the concept of fear and fury. And he said that was kind of the mindset in wrestling, was to turn his fear into fury and utilize that as motivation to beat all of his opponents. Well, it wasn't long before he utilized that same concept in his career. And so think about it, at 16, he's been utilizing fear and anger to drive him in his career. So we started breaking that down and we started talking about it. And then I started making him his own remedies according to whatever we discovered in our conversations. And 6 weeks later, he went in for a checkup on his kidney, 100%. It was down around 20%. And they wanted to take it out before anything else went wrong, right? And now it's functioning, it's pink, and he's at 100% function. And I went, oh my God, there's something to this. Holy cow, what just happened? Bach flower remedies. So, I mean, it's been it's been quite a while now, and he's still doing really well. He's still doing really well. And in fact, what I'm able to help him with is now we are looking at trial lawyers and people in high functioning careers and looking at how we can tailor their diets to what they do. So when we were in trial, we were just both a big experiment. We juiced, we ate plant-based foods. I supported him throughout every day with Bach flower remedies in his water. And we did a lot of supplementation, things like PQQ, GABA, fatty acids for brain function, for memory and focus, B12 for stress. Like, we just really started experimenting in how we were going to do that. So yeah, I'll get your question here in just a second. Okay. All right. So diet and nutrition. By now we've all heard the famous quote from Hippocrates, the father of medicine, let thy food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food, which is why the talk before this was so important when we're talking about soil nutrition, soil content, soil mineral content. You have to know that the organic food you're eating actually has the minerals in it that's going to feed you and help your body survive. From brain health to immune function, healing broken bones to autoimmune disorders, our bodies thrive on nutrition. But don't be fooled, not all food is created equal. GMOs, pesticides, herbicides, glyphosate have robbed the microorganisms in the soil and in our guts, leaving everyone who consumes them vulnerable to illness and gut issues, which affect brain function and increase risk for illness of all kinds. The blueprint of our bodies was designed to have clean food, water, and air in order to survive. Understanding food as fuel, mindset shift, of course. Embrace your vegetables, people. Embrace those greens. Embrace those fruits. There are many creative ways to incorporate fresh, whole foods into your diet. Make your bites count. Get plenty of hydration. Clean, filtered water, free from pesticides, chlorine, and fluoride is essential for optimal hydration. And learn to accommodate for cooking. So many people, it makes me so sad. They don't know how to cook, and there are things like Instapots out there. I mean, and it's really, that's the number one thing. In addition to most of the clients that I have, we do FaceTime cooking classes, because we'll start with like vegan pizza. Right? We'll start with things like coconut milk Alfredo, things that are tasty, but that also are easy to make for them, because we've come so far from cooking. Nobody knows how to do it anymore. So eating clean, whether you're vegan or paleo, eating clean and knowing where to source organic, non-GMO foods is important. The Environmental Working Group is a great place to go get your Clean 15 and your Dirty Dozen. So that way you know which foods you can buy organic and which foods you can't. I just go all organic because, well, you may as well. But if you're in a pinch, there are some things that you can buy non-organic that aren't going to be as harmful. Another thing that I do with my clients, secretingredientsthemovie.com. That is mandatory watching. That is like in the first or second visit, because they have to understand the link between their food and their bodies and what it can do for them. Chronic illness, it's only going to go up from here. And I think we all know that as a result of the health of our nation. Getting to know your farmers, super important. Vote with your dollars. If you can buy local first and you can buy local organic from your garden, from your farmers, or grow your own garden first, that's always the most ideal, because then you're actually involved in your food process. We need to reconnect with our food supply, the oneness of where our fuel comes from, and take an active part in our nutrition. If we leave it at the hands of corporate agriculture, we will only get more of the same. Our vitality is not for sale or profit. This is what nutrition might look like. And gut microbiome, I'm going to do a quick overview on that since I'm kind of running out of time. I'm just going to kind of whiz through this. I did talk to you a little bit about how you being born is very important in order to get those necessary microbes. Skin-to-skin contact is super important after birth. Breastfeeding, even more so important. There's actually oligosaccharides in breast milk that were found to not have any human need. So when researchers and microbiologists started to study what those were, they realized that they were strictly food for the newly implanted microbes, what they call the seedlings in a baby's gut. So, I mean, I always say breast milk is miraculous and it can cure anything. So if you have an earache, breast milk. Pink eye, breast milk. The word microbe microbiome is defined as the collection of microbes or microorganisms that inhabit the environment, creating a sort of mini ecosystem. Now that goes all the way throughout your entire digestive system, which starts at your mouth and ends at your anus, but not in Uranus. Or maybe, yes, there too. These communities exist in unique complementary blends and inhabit everything from our skin and genitals to our mouths and eyes, and of course, our intestines. It's been estimated that 70 to 80% of our immune system is found in our gut, so it's really important to make sure that we take good care of it. In case you didn't know, I like to remind everyone of this. It is your sovereign right to choose what goes into your body. You have the power to choose health at any given moment. You can make that choice right now. Your body is resilient and amazing and has a desire to be in balance and to heal. Oddly enough, old dogs can learn new tricks. I've seen it happen. I'm a really good example of that. Your health and your family's health is totally worth it. Healthy food is delicious. You can retrain your taste buds in less than 90 days. And reconnecting and realigning with your intuition helps you become your very best health advocate. Fear. This was something I wanted to add to this talk this year because fear is something that we've all been through so much in the last couple of years. Fear is the first thing and only thing I believe that will trip us up and cause us to kind of slide into a space of illness and disease and imbalance. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when we don't give into it is I find when we actually start to overcome it. We can feel it come on like a wave. We can let it recede. We can let it pass by. We can say, isn't that interesting? I noticed that fear is coming up. We can acknowledge it and not be afraid of fear, but then we can also overcome and decide and choose whether or not we want to entertain it. Where the fear has gone, when the fear is gone, there will be nothing, right? You just want to energetically neutralize that involvement with fear. And that's one of the biggest things that I've learned this last year. Yes, I can take Bach flower remedies, I can take Mimulus, I can take Aspen, I can take all of the things to help support my body dealing with fear. But ultimately, what I choose to think and believe will be the ultimate deciding factors, whether or not I give in to fear. Fear weakens the immune system. Just having anxious thoughts can weaken your immune response in as little as 30 minutes. Constant stress takes an even bigger toll and makes it harder to fend off flu, things like herpes, shingles, and other viruses. Stress decreases the body's lymphocytes, the white blood cells that help fight off infection. The lower your lymphocyte level, the more at risk you are for viruses. Sustained high levels of inflammation point to an overworked, overtired immune system that cannot properly protect you and lead to anxiety and depression. One of the tools that I found this year was from the Ho'oponopono tribe. I used to call this Hoponopono. This, because I don't know how to pronounce it. This came into my life in 2014 when I was, going through my divorce, and it was extremely high conflict and extremely stressful. And a friend of mine told me the story about a man, a Dr. Hugh Len in Hawaii, who was a psychiatrist and actually went to University of Iowa as well. Got to throw that in there since I'm from Iowa. But he used this prayer, and he decided he was going to work at one of the most notorious criminal mental institutions. So much so that the people would walk, like the residents and the staff would walk with their backs up against the wall when they're going down a hallway because they didn't want to be attacked from behind by the criminals who were just mentally going crazy. And it was very high turnover rate there as well. So he decided, instead of seeing them, that he was going to sit and he was going to pray this prayer over each and every one of their files. And within 2 years, this place was closed down. They never had another incident again. And in fact, a lot of these people rehabilitated. And so I never forgot that article that I read in 2014. And this kept popping up in my life. And so I thought, okay, I need to really look into this. And so I first learned about it through a shamanic teacher I have named Liana Shanti, and then further studied Dr. Hugh Len and what he had to say about it. He wrote a book on this. And the concept is that you picture ice blue, just like this iceberg. And that can help and help to neutralize fear energy. You just picture ice blue. You can even say it, just saying it. Colors have a vibration. Words have vibration. This can stop that vibration. And it's worked beautifully. I love you. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. Thank you. And the idea with Ho'oponopono is that as within, so without. As we accept responsibility for what is happening around us, around the world, that we are co-creators with the universe of the world around us. As we accept that responsibility, whether we understand it or not, we change things. The ugliness of the world that I believe we've seen is just like the scum that builds from bone broth. Y'all ever made bone broth? You know the scum that comes to the top? this stuff has to be exposed in order for us to kind of have situational awareness and really live in reality. I mean, where we were 2 years ago, we had no idea that some of these things existed. I am better for it. I am more empowered for it. I don't look at this as being the worst thing on the face of the planet. Is it going to change things? Yes, change is inevitable. Change is a constant. History tells us that, right? Nothing's ever going to stay the same. But what we choose to do with it is, to me, the most powerful thing in it, that we each have that choice. We each have the power to make that choice. So this simple prayer has worked wonders for me, as does the Shamanic 28-second hot breaths. And this is a very simple breathing exercise. You can do it with me right now if you want to or not. We're only going to do one of the 9 rounds that you can do of this, but it helps to clean and clear energy, reconnect you with your own inner child who is probably afraid and why you're also feeling fear. And it works on a somatic cellular level to help relieve fear and anxiety. So you just sit in your chair, and we can end with this if you would like, since I'm getting the note. All right. And you can close your eyes. You want to keep your jaw loose. Your acupuncture meridian for your uterus or for your lower abdomen is in your lower jaw. And so you want to keep your jaw loose, and you want to keep your tongue settled in the bottom part of your mouth. And you're going to breathe in through your nose for 7 seconds. Let your belly fill with air. Breathe in. And then you're going to hold it. And imagine this is like a circle. So at the top of the circle, you're going to breathe in for 7 seconds. At like 15, right? At the 3, you're going to hold for 7 seconds. You're going to breathe out through your mouth slowly for 7 seconds. Just let it all go out. Let your tummy go to the back of your spine. And then you're going to hold that for 7 seconds. And that is 1 round of a 28-second ha breath. This resembles the life, death, rebirth cycle around the world that's studied in many different shamanic culture, or many different cultures around the world. Not all are shamanic, but what I find interesting is that this breath cycle is repeated throughout different cultures around the world and has been used for thousands of years. It helps alleviate fear, anxiety feelings. And so anytime I start to go into anxiety, this is what I do. And this is what helps me over and over and over again. So I wanted to make sure that I left you guys with some kind of tool to utilize when you left here today. These are the sources from where I got all of the information I shared with you today. It's been my pleasure to be able to share some of this with you, some of the things that I've learned, the culmination of my life raising children outside of the modern medical model. So thank you for joining me today and being a part of this. Thank you.